Hello, my dear friends. How are you doing? Hope you are having an amazing day and not having to deal with drama. Ready for new stories I have for you today? Let's go to the first one. And don't forget to listen to the end of the story, guys, to hear my insights. Enjoy the stories, and don't forget to like and subscribe. And of course, don't forget to leave a comment. My husband, 38 male, and I, 36 female, were married for 12 years and have two wonderful boys, Jake, 10, and Sam, 8. We had what I thought was a happy marriage, but that all changed about a year ago. I discovered that my husband had been cheating on me with a woman named Lisa, 29 female. It turned out he had been seeing her for almost a year, and the affair came to light because Lisa got pregnant. My husband came clean about the affair because Lisa was having his baby, and he felt he had no other choice. I was devastated. The betrayal was like a knife to my heart, and I knew I couldn't continue the marriage. We started the separation process, and during this time, Lisa gave birth to a baby girl. The court proceedings were tense and exhausting, but I was determined to protect myself and my boys. While we were still in court, Lisa became pregnant again. My husband seemed thrilled, as if he had found a new lease on life with his new family. Meanwhile, I focused on rebuilding my life and being the best mother I could be to Jake and Sam. However, their happiness was short-lived. Just after their second child was born, things started to unravel for my husband. Lisa turned out to not be the person he thought she was. She was demanding, manipulative, and soon after the second child was born, she started making life very difficult for him. They fought constantly, and he found himself increasingly isolated from his new family. It wasn't long before karma bit him hard. He lost his job due to the stress and distraction caused by his tumultuous new relationship. Financial issues piled up, and he realized that his dream life with Lisa was more of a nightmare. He saw how stable and happy our boys and I had become and began reaching out, trying to reconnect. He started by sending flowers and apologetic letters, then moved to more direct pleas. He admitted he had made a huge mistake and that he wanted to come back home. He begged for my forgiveness and for another chance to make things right. He said he missed our family, and he realized he had thrown away something precious. I was stunned by his audacity. After everything he put me through, how could he expect me to take him back? Our boys were just starting to heal, and I was finding my strength again. I told him that while I could forgive him for the sake of co-parenting, I could never forget the pain and betrayal. I made it clear that we would never be together again. So, Reddit, am I the a-hole for refusing to take my cheating husband back after his life fell apart? He argues that everyone deserves a second chance, and some of my friends and family think I should consider it for the sake of the boys. But I just can't see past the betrayal and the pain he caused. Update. So I found out that karma came back after my ex-husband hard. Lisa left him for another man she had been seeing secretly. She didn't just leave him. She left the country and abandoned their two young children with him. Now, my ex-husband is a single father with no job and struggling to make ends meet. He reached out to me again, this time pleading for financial help. He said he couldn't manage on his own and that the kids needed basic necessities that he couldn't afford. He also demanded that I step in and help with the kids, claiming that they needed a mother figure, and since their biological mother had abandoned them, it was my duty to step up. I was in shock. I felt terrible for the children. They didn't ask to be in this situation and were innocent victims of their parents' poor choices. However, I was furious he even has the audacity to ask me that. My primary responsibility is to my own children, ensuring they feel safe and secure. I offered to help him find resources and services that could assist him. I even suggested he contact social services for support. But he wasn't satisfied with that. He accused me of being heartless and punishing him for the past. He said I was denying his innocent children a chance at a stable life out of spite. This situation has caused a huge rift among my family and friends. Some believe I should help him out of compassion for the children, arguing that they deserve a stable home. Others understand my position and think I'm right to protect my own children's well-being first. Reddit, did I make the right call? Am I the a-hole for not stepping in to help my ex-husband financially and refusing to be a mother figure to his children with his affair partner? I feel for those kids, but I can't jeopardize my own family's stability for them. While it's true the kids are innocent, that doesn't mean OP is responsible for them. OP's ex-husband is using his kids to manipulate OP. OP has already been through enough, and her ex is being selfish for trying to get her back in his life after everything he did to her. They're his children and his responsibility, so he needs to find a way to help keep his family. And now let's hear the community's opinion. Not the a-hole. You're right. Those kids are not your responsibility. Your ex-husband made his bed, and now he has to lie in it. It's unfair of him to expect you to step in and fix the mess he created. Focus on your boys, and don't let him guilt you into doing more than you already have. Not the a-hole. Your ex-husband's financial and parental issues are his to manage. You have a duty to your own children, not the children of his affair. If he's struggling, he needs to seek assistance through the proper channels, not demand it from you. It's awful for the kids, but you're not the bad guy here. Your ex needs to take responsibility for the life he's chosen. Perhaps family counseling might help your boys understand the situation better and reduce the emotional manipulation from your ex. My late husband has a daughter, Michaela, from his previous marriage. She was 9 when we got married. Her mom was attempting to alienate her from us. She talked junk about me. Keep in mind, ex knew very little about me. Before anyone asks, I didn't break up the marriage. They divorced when Michaela was 5. I met my husband 2 years later. His ex still wanted him back and kept telling Michaela I was why they weren't getting back together. My husband was the one who left her because she cheated and had no plans. He was in a long court battle to get more time with Michaela. But safe to say, Michaela didn't like me and felt like I was the witch who was keeping her daddy from her mommy. I tried to bond with her, and she rejected me time and time again. Together, my husband and I had 3 children. A little after our youngest was born, when Michaela was 13, her mom was arrested and sentenced to 15 years in prison. My husband received sole custody. It was a big adjustment for Michaela. We got her into therapy. She still wanted very little to do with me or her siblings. I went to therapy with her, but eventually the therapist said that the best thing I could do is give Michaela space. Pushing the issue would just push her away. The therapist also told Michaela she didn't have to like me, but she did need to treat me like a human being, and as I always respected her, she needed to respect me. Michaela did not listen. She called me horrible names, said nasty things to her siblings, kept asking her dad to divorce me. It led to a lot of arguments with my husband because I was giving her space, treated her with kindness, and I was her punching bag. He said she had been through a lot, but I truly think it's because she was nice to him. Even her therapist was concerned, but nothing changed. Michaela is now 15. My other 3 children are 4, and 2. My husband passed away 6 months ago. Initially, I took custody of Michaela because her only other family were her maternal grandparents in another state. Michaela even said she wanted to stay with me so she could stay near her friends. I kept her in therapy, but the treatment got worse. I tried to understand. She's lost 2 parents in a short period. She's stuck with the woman she was conditioned to resent and 3 little ones. I've tried everything while balancing my own grief and handling the little ones. It came to a head a couple of weeks ago. Michaela was out. I put the little ones to bed. I ended up having a good cry because I was just so stressed and missing my husband. Michaela came home and asked what was wrong. I told her. She began calling me a whiny drama queen, saying now I know how her mom felt when he wouldn't take her back. She called me a bunch of terrible names and kept following me to taunt me as I walked away. I finally locked myself in my room. After speaking to my own therapist, I realized this isn't good for my mental health. I called her grandparents and said I'd signed custody to them. I asked them to come get her sooner than later. When I told Michaela, she started crying. She begged me to let her stay. I said no. If I'm so awful, if I'm such a witch, she shouldn't be here. She said she didn't mean it. I looked her in the eye and said she's been saying it for 6 years. I'm finally setting her free. She won't have to deal with me or her demon-spawned brothers, her words, ever again. She said her grandparents have a lot of rules. I told her that's a shame, but maybe it'll straighten her out. It was the harshest I've ever been with her, but I just couldn't keep up the kindness. They came to get her within a few days. She didn't say goodbye. Her grandparents have maintained contact with me, told me they're getting her a new therapist. She'll attend a new school in the fall. I said I hope she does better. Friends of my husband's find this all to be incredibly cruel. She says I should have tried more, that shipping her off won't do any good. They say it wasn't what he would have wanted. Am I the a-hole for sending her away? Hopefully Michaela can find some structure and stability with her grandparents, since she won't have OP to use as a punching bag to keep up her resentment. OP is also grieving and has to think about herself and her children as well. And people who think OP is cruel should take and raise Michaela themselves. And now let's hear the community's opinion. Not the a-hole. There wasn't really a win in this situation, and 15 is old enough to learn how to properly behave. Not the a-hole. Did they expect you to be the punching bag until she went to college? You're a single parent to 3 young kids. Having an angry teen complaining at you non-stop was not tenable. She'll be fine with attention and structure from the grands. Not the a-hole. You've gone above and beyond in trying to support Michaela through her trauma. But there comes a point where your mental health and the well-being of your younger children must be prioritized. Michaela's behavior was aggressive and detrimental to your household. Sometimes, a different environment with her grandparents, who are willing to continue therapy and provide structure, can be the best solution for her. Backstory. My husband's ex, they were together 5 years, has been making me very uncomfortable by things she has said and done. They were together 5 years and she is friends with his sister, so when I moved here, to a new country where I am learning a new language, and she asked me to meet, I thought, what could be the harm? Better to stay friendly so it wouldn't be awkward when or if I saw her around. I thought maybe she was trying to be nice to me. My husband and I got married pretty quickly after meeting, 1 year, and she has made comments about how it was great we got married to see if it would work, even though John promised me he would never fall in love on his trip. He said he could never do something like that. She seemed to know everything about our relationship, and she talked about how she talked about all of these things with my husband's sister. It made me feel very uneasy. I can't really explain it. She talked to me about the city and then pulled out her phone with a map. She pulled up our address. How the duck did she have that memorized? We had just gotten the apartment as soon as I moved here. It was brand new. To show me how to get to places. I thought it was all weird, but whatever. Everything separated wasn't a terrible thing, but I got this dreadful and uneasy feeling about it all. We didn't talk afterward until she texted me before a weekend trip with my husband. Have fun in city you are visiting. It freaked me out. I started to feel like I was being cyberstalked by her. She was going through and liking a lot of my pictures on Instagram. She talked about how she had jokingly used Facebook only for stalking. Nothing was over the top red flaggy, but it was all so uncomfortable. My instincts told me I needed to distance myself from her. My husband normally gives people the benefit of the doubt, but he commented that he had noticed her behavior had escalated and was no longer normal. The last straw was her showing up unannounced to a traditional event in my husband's village. We were supposed to go as well, and I am positive the reason she didn't give us a heads up is because she wanted to catch us off guard by being there. She sent a message in a group chat that my husband has been in with her forever. That was 4 other couples, including his sister and sister's husband. That said in Swiss German, already tipsy with husband's mom. My husband left the group chat and we decided to go no contact. As soon as he left the group chat, not even 15 minutes later, after having not contacted me in 2 months, she sent me a text asking me to meet up. I didn't respond and thought she would get the message. My husband told his sister it is fine that they are friends, obviously, but her behavior has been weird and made us uncomfortable recently, so we would rather not have her at the same events. If sister is going to invite her, please give us a heads up so we can decide whether or not to come. We blocked his ex on social media and communicated this with his sister and his mom, and thought that was the end of it. Yesterday was my nephew's first birthday. My husband is godfather. I wrapped his gift we had picked out and went on the train to meet his family, who were picking me up from the train station to go to his sister's. His mom, dad, grandmother, and I walked into his sister's apartment, and I looked inside and guess who was sitting there? His ex, sitting and smiling with an evil grin. I immediately went back outside to call my husband. This was supposed to be a family-only event, and his sister knew how hurtful this would be. There is no way she didn't realize what she was doing. I stayed in the hallway talking to my husband until he arrived 30 minutes later. We went into the apartment together, gave our nephew his gift, and he asked his sister basically, "What the duck?" We were all in a room with 4 people. His sister said, "She's going soon, don't worry," so we waited for 15 minutes. His ex was in the other room the entire time, speaking Swiss German with his family and not even visiting the baby. She came in and gave us both a hug and said, "Sorry," and left. We left after that, and his mother told us that his ex left right after we left. Now his family is mad at us because we made it about us and not the baby. I feel really hurt and betrayed. It's hard enough to learn German, which I speak to them in less than 5 months since I've started learning. But I also feel isolated because they speak Swiss German, which is a dialect that is even challenging to understand when someone is fluent in German. I feel unwelcome and unwanted. I don't know where to go from here. Did we overreact by causing problems? Should we cut contact with his sister for a while to see if his ex leaves her alone as soon as she realizes she can't use his sister to see us? She, ex, is being wildly inappropriate, and I think the sister is encouraging it. Do not trust her. OP, you probably will need to accept that sister-in-law is actually complacent with the ex, and I would not be surprised with the purpose of trying to get her and your husband together again. Depending on where you live in Swiss, people can be extremely closed. You say you moved to a small village, and even if everybody is cordial with you, you are most surely considered an outsider. Source: moved to Swiss some years ago. I feel unwelcome and unwanted. Unfortunately, I believe you 100%. If you want to survive here, you need to get used to it. You should talk clearly to your husband. He seems to have your side. Not all the places in Swiss are like this. You could consider moving to a city or a bigger place, ideally where he has some friends. Having a Swiss peer introduce you is really the only way to get into the group. My wife and I have 2 sons and 3 daughters. This post is about our sons. They both wanted cars for their 16th birthday, and for whatever reason, they wanted brand new cars. We both have good jobs, but we would rather have money for their college and not spend it on a car. So my wife and I made a decision to get pre-owned cars. Yes, they are an older model, but you would never know. They look really nice, and they are not a junker you would see. They are relatively nice cars. Yesterday was their birthday, and Nick was ecstatic. He was hugging us, thanking us for his new car. He did not care that it was pre-owned and an old model. Their older sister helped pay for the cars, and he was thanking her. Michael, on the other hand, looked at us and said, "You could have gotten us cool new cars." And he went inside. "No thank you. No I love you, Mom and Dad. Nothing." This pissed my wife off to a level I have never seen her before. She was ready to drive his car down to the scrapyard and leave it there. Would it be wrong for us to return Mike's car and let Nick keep his? My mother, their grandmother, thinks that is being cruel. My wife thinks if Michael is this ungrateful, he can walk everywhere. Nope. If he isn't willing to settle for a used car at 16, then he can save up his own money and buy the car he wants. In the meantime, he can walk. What a little crap. I like the idea of him having to earn the car back from his parents. I think it would be more cruel, OP, not to punish him in some way for this. His attitude is way out of line, and if he keeps behaving that way, reality will slap him down with far harsher punishments than you could ever dole out. It might also be time to think about getting him a role model, mentor, outside of your home. Teenagers often don't like to listen to their parents, but he might take correction on his behavior better from another person. Are there any trusted older men you know who would be willing to spend time with him? Preferably activity-based things. When I was 12, I found out that my parents were in some kind of open relationship, which I think is not a proper marriage. But after a few months, it blew up in their faces, and then they both decided to separate and live with their own partners, and gone with a divorce without even thinking of me. And please try to understand me, as my emotions are all over the place while writing this. My father's partner had 2 boys, and mother's partner had 1 girl, and one was on the way. I had to live 2 to 3 years of misery with my new life. I didn't even used to get proper clothes, and I had to wear my older stepbrother's clothes. They deliberately used to send me to my grandpa's house when they wanted to go for a long vacation with their new families, and would always argue with each other on their terms for keeping me, like saying, "We are going out of town this week. He lived with me extra 2 days, so it's your turn to keep him this week." I felt devastated each and every day living like this, and later I started to live in my friend's home every other day to avoid going home. And I even started to fight with my parents on every little thing, which they started, and they pulled the last straw when they forgot about my birthday, where they used to celebrate every birthday with their new kids. I felt like someone punched me in my guy with the force of a truck. I took my clothes and some food from the fridge and ran away for 3 or 4 days. And of course the cops were called, and I had to return home, and again I had a verbal fight with my parents, where I kicked my dad in the balls. In all this mess, my grandpa came after 45 minutes after he heard cops found me and realized in what conditions I've been living in since their divorce, and berated both of them, and took me to live with him permanently. Later, my grandpa became my guardian as I had violent tendencies towards my parents and their new kids. I knew that my grandfather was a cold and emotionless man, but still loved me more than anything. He admitted me in a good private school, gave me good food, unlike where I used to eat cold food every alternate day, and clothes of my own, and made me join boxing or martial arts. But his only demand was to massage his legs and shoulder every day, which I liked to do. No video games, and didn't want to end up in an old age home. So I lived alone with my grandfather in a very large house for 3 or 4 years, where my parents used to come every weekend to meet me, and I never smiled when I used to meet them, which regret and guilt used to eat them from inside. I considered my grandpa everything, so I didn't need anyone anymore, and I made good friends from the new school. I was happy. On my 18th birthday, I wanted to celebrate it with my grandpa and my friends, and I told my parents in advance to not bother to come to Grandpa's place on that day. But they came with their new families anyways, which I hated the most, and they looked different from the last time I saw them. I told them I don't need them anymore, and I told their kids I despised them since the beginning. We had a fight then and there, me versus all of them, and at this point I lost my cool, then closed myself in the room and called it the day. Later, my grandfather had to tell me to head home as I didn't want to meet them anymore. 3 years went by since my parents lost hope of ever getting me back on their good sides, and I started going to college, and I started working with a finance firm, which was previously owned by my grandpa's friend. I just celebrated my 21st birthday alone with my grandpa due to pandemic, and had my first beer with him, and later, he shared his prized wine with me from the cellar. But suddenly, 3 weeks ago, he passed away due to his weak heart. I was numb and devastated. The funeral happened. All of my relatives, including my parents with their partners and kids, were also present there. We buried him next to Grandma's grave. I just kept myself in Grandpa's room after ceremony. My parents are now telling me that they will move to Grandpa's house whether I like it or not for a while. His will was declared where he gave me 80% of his property and 20% to an orphanage. My parents were furious and started calling me names, and I don't have any energy to fight back as I've been exhausted. Now I am constantly bombarded with calls and messages from my other relatives, telling me to talk with my parents. I need help. I'm in a bad place, and I need some wisdom from strangers who have been in a similar situation. Well, they can't move to your house unless you let them. If they come, call the police and have them removed as trespassers. Your grandfather made a decision, and you're in the right to honor his wishes. Change the locks, etc. They might have keys. Get a lawyer to send a cease and desist letter, obviously depending on where you live and the laws there. Block everyone on phone, social media, etc. Don't let them bulldoze you. They didn't do anything for you when they could have, and now intend to exploit you. Hello, I am David, a 46-year-old man who is in some pretty big crap right now. Last night I was consoling my daughter-in-law as she just had a pretty big fight with my son, and I was explaining to her how this is natural and how my son has a pretty uptight temperament, and so she knows he gets like this often, but then recovers and feels better. Alexandra was crying and crying, and I was just sitting on the couch listening to her, but not touching her in any way apart from the occasional hug she'd ask for. I thought everything was going fine. I hadn't ever comforted her like this before, but I figured she didn't have anyone else to go to as my wife was working. Well, out of the blue, she kissed me. It was a small, quick peck on the lips, but I was just dumbfounded. I didn't even know what was happening. I literally had to ask myself again and again if that just really happened. I didn't know what to say, and thankfully, she immediately stood up and left the house. Not a goodbye or anything. She kissed me and left the house in under 30 seconds. I'm not sure if this was her intention from the beginning, or if it was something she thought was right to do at the very moment. I don't know. I figured I should tell my wife ASAP before she found out any other way. Her shift ends at 6 a.m., so I set an alarm for 6:30 and waited for her. As soon as she walked through the door, I sat her down and explained the situation. Well, all blame was put onto me, and she is not changing her mind. She is insisting I must have led her on in some way, and even though I've told her the entire true story, she is convinced I kissed her back, and we've done more than I'm letting my wife believe. Let's just say neither of us got any more sleep this morning, and she is still angry at me. I'm appalled she doesn't believe a word I'm saying. I wish I had recorded the event just so I could prove my innocence. My wife is planning on calling our daughter-in-law and having her come over to explain the situation and her intentions. Rest in peace to me until she gets here. I'm asking now, what do I do? I know there's a possibility she still won't believe us, despite whatever Alexandra or I say. How do I move on from something I never even did? Right now, my wife is not speaking to me at all, and when she does speak, she is cold and distant. She really believes me to be a liar and a cheater. You did nothing wrong. In fact, you did everything right, and your wife is being ridiculous. Whatever you do, don't apologize and don't back down. Stand your ground here. You are not on trial. If she really believes you to be a liar and a cheater just because of this one situation, and flat out refuses to listen to you, then maybe it's time to reconsider your marriage. This isn't how it's supposed to work at all.